I had a lot of fun with this video idea last offseason, so we're bringing it back. With spring training just around the corner, it's time to do some tier lists with how the teams in the American League stack up against each other, who's the best at each position, kind of doing a power ranking for all the positions around the diamond. And at the very end of the video, we will figure out who the team is that has the most positions as their best, and also what team actually has the most WAR by Steamer projections among the 26-man rosters according to Fangraphs roster resource. Welcome into the video. Appreciate you guys. Make sure you like, make sure you're subscribed. Do all those fun things for me. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we get to start off with a banger. And I know bangers, okay? Cal Raleigh leading the league, I think all American League catchers with F-WAR projection. 5.2 up next, Yainer Diaz at 3.0, Shea Bangaliers at 2.5, Logan O'Hoppe at 2.1, and Jonah Heim rounding out this list at 1.7. A relatively deep position, I'd say, in the American League West, but Cal takes the cake at the top, as he does so well, Mr. Big Dumper. The Mariners would not fare so well in the next category at first base with newly signed, I don't know why Jake Berger's F4 is so small there. It's kind of weird. Christian Walker is the best first baseman based around F4 projections, according to Steamer. New Astros first baseman, signed a 3-year, $60 million contract. We get it, right? Mariners wanted him. Could have made sense. Luke Raley finds himself tied with Jake Berger here at second at 1.7. Nolan Shonowell finds himself at fourth at 1.4. And Tyler Soderstrom of the Athletics rounding out this list at 1.0. Not as deep of a position, I would say, but Luke Raley, 1.7. I could see it going above 2, but projection models are usually pretty low on him because of his high strikeout rate, and I understand that. He's also not a natural first baseman, so a little bit of Mariners bias here. I don't care. Luke Raley, I think he's better than Jake Berger, personally. Second base, it's a tough one. A tough look for the Seattle Mariners. Marcus Semien is the best second baseman in the American League West, according to these projections. Did not have as good of a year as people would have expected last year, but he does take the cake here as the only second baseman projected to amount more than 4 wins in the American League West in 2025, followed up by Altuve with 3.6, Zach Galloff at 2.8, and Luis Rengifo, Mariners killer, at 2.5 wins there, with Dylan Moore rounding out this list at 1.8 wins. Not a bad season for Demo. Obviously, we know second base, it's not his own, second base isn't just going to be Demo. And roster resource, it's a little interesting with how the Mariners roster is kind of constructed right now, but even with if it was Bliss on the roster or whatever, second base, I think the Mariners still are the weakest in the division at that spot. Even if Galloff had a pretty rough year last year offensively, still a lot of promise there. But the Mariners find themselves with the back-to-back 1.8 F-WARs at second base and third base here. Newly acquired third baseman this offseason, Isaac Paredes. Now, this could change if Alex Bregman does go back to the Astros, but as it stands right now, Paredes is their third baseman. Obviously, if Bregman goes there, that kind of shakes some stuff around, and the Astros definitely do get a lot better. But Paredes still leading the American League West with 3.9 F-WAR projected. Very, very good projections out of him. Those Crawford boxes going to come up big for him. Josh Young here coming in at second at 2.3. Mariners third baseman Jorge Polanco, anybody? 1.8 F-WAR out of Polo here. Yeah, I hope we get at least 2. That'd be nice. Yoan Moncada, third baseman for the Angels now, still in a White Sox pick there. 1.7 projected, and then Gio Urshela for the Athletics at 1.3, rounding out the third baseman here. I was surprised how big of a gap there was between Paredes and Josh Young here, but the projection models know damn well Paredes is hitting 50 bombs to the Crawford boxes next year. And arguably the deepest position in the American League West, shortstop. I did switch. Jacob Wilson and Zach Neto should be switched here. I just messed up when I made them, and I was very too far gone to go back and fix it. So apologies. But Corey Seager, he's the GOAT shortstop in the American League West. Bro's just goated. If he stays healthy, consider him a top 5 MVP finish pretty much consistently. It would be Zach Neto at 3.5 projected. Roster resource right now has Tim Anderson as the starting shortstop because Neto is not back from his injury, but he is projected 3.5 wins. He put up a 3.5 win season last year. He was very good. I don't expect that to change. And then Jacob Wilson is a big jump here. I know he's young. highly touted prospect, good bat to ball skills, but a 3.4 Thraw 415. Thanks for the subscription. But a 3.4 F4 projected for Jacob Wilson, I just feel like that's like kind of crazy. And then Jeremy Pena also tied there with 3.4. With JP Crawford, the Mariners have the least valuable shortstop by this projection model, but at 3 wins. A 3-win season at a JP, that's solid. It's a good bounce back. Kind of weird to see him at the bottom of the list, I'm not going to lie. The young guns here in Pena, Neto, and Wilson really shining through. So how will the Mariners respond? Second left fielder, baby. Randy Arozarena, you know how we do. Second best left fielder in the American League West. Wyatt Langford, almost a 4-win season here. Kurt to the Texas Rangers. Good for him. Damn you, Detroit, for taking Max Clark instead of Wyatt Langford. Damn you. But oh well. Up next, Taylor Ward, third here. Seth Brown still kicking it in Oakland at 0.9, and then newly signed Ben Gamel, patrolling left field for the Houston Astros. Obviously, Altuve would go out there if Bregman were to sign, so it gets a little funky. They've also got Taylor Trammell on the roster. Like, left field in Houston's weird, but Houston's outfield is largely pretty rough by these projections. But Randy coming in here at second. I don't necessarily disagree. Him and Taylor Ward could flip by season's end, but Wyatt Langford, if he continues where he's going, he is going to be a problem for a long time. The best player in the American League West by Steamer projected F4 is Julio Yarnell Rodriguez. 6.2. The only player in the American League West to have over 6 projected wins is Julio Rodriguez. He is the best player in the American League West in 2025. Chef's kiss. Next up, Mike Trout. If he can stay healthy, we all know what Trout can do on a baseball field. Still given projected 4.2 wins. Hopefully he can stay healthy and then just not play against the Mariners. JJ Bleav up here third, had a great breakout season for the Athletics last year. Evan Carter coming in here 4, and then Jake Myers rounding out this list at 5 with 1.8. Evan Carter, I feel like, is a little low based on like how he kind of showed up in the playoffs, but obviously last year and the injuries like really kind of stunted his growth, so we'll see. 2.2 is probably pretty accurate, just like with the offensive profile maybe not being as explosive as when he first came up, but I am jazzed. But the best right fielder, the one position where the Athletics take the cake in having the best player at this position, is Lawrence Butler. Broke onto the scene last year, was nuclear in the second half. 3.3 projected F4. Followed that is Victor Robles at 2.2, barely beating out Adolis Garcia for 2.1 projected F4. Up next is Chas McCormick, 1.7 projected F4, and then Joe Adell rounding out this list at 5 with 1.1. Victor Robles, I mean, I think this is a pretty modest projection. I think this is pretty fair as well, though. I don't think a lot of people will expect him to kind of repeat what he did in 2024 going to 2025 over a full 162. But if he is that player that he was when he was with the Mariners, he will be the best right fielder in the American League West. Unless, of course, Lawrence Butler goes ham sandwich. You know what I mean? Like, if he really does pop off. The most disappointing position, like 0.2 out of your starting DH from Mitch Haniger is rough. It is a rough look compared to the rest of the dogs on this list here. Jordan, the second highest projected F4, and he's a DH. 5.4. You got Brent Rooker, newly signed extension, just an overall great hitter. Great dude, too. Good Twitter personality. Him and Bryce Miller been going back and forth on Twitter all offseason, just having some fun. Jock Peterson, the Rangers signed this offseason. Obviously, he's only going to hit against righties, but he's still going to amount 2 wins against those right-handed pitchers. Jorge Soler in Los Angeles. We'll see if he's there by season's end, but hey, 1.5 wins out of a DH because you know he can pop 30 homers just at any given moment. But yeah, Mitch Haniger rounding out this list, it's a bad look for the Mariners, and it does not get any better when you look at the F4 on the bench. Now, this is kind of where roster resource gets a little funky, because on the Mariners bench right now, it's Mitch Garver, Donovan Solano, Austin Shenton, and Dom Canzone. Shenton and Canzone, we just did a podcast about it. Divish and Ty Dane Gonzalez do not have either of those guys making the opening day 26-man roster. So we'll see where that kind of goes. But with the two main guys on your bench right now being Garver and Solano, They're not big WAR producers. Solano put up 1 win last year. Obviously, Garver was negative, but only 1.8 for the Mariners here is really disappointing. The Rangers, like Higashioka, is, I think, almost worth just as many wins as the entire Mariners bench by this projection model. Obviously, that's Josh Smith. Steps in big whenever Corey Seager does get injured. John Singleton representing the Astros here. Anthony Rendon moved to the bench because Yoan Moncada. And then that is Miguel Andujar for the Athletics there. Yeah, Mariners bench just took an L. Took a fat L. Rangers are looking sneaky good, guys. I'm just going to put that out there. And it stays this way with the best pitcher in the American League West. The crown still goes to Jacob deGrom. If he can stay healthy, we all know what deGrom can do. He is like Mike Trout. If he's healthy, and sure, it's not going to be 200 innings. It's not going to be 32 starts. Healthy deGrom in 2025 is probably 22 to 25 starts, 150 innings, and pitching in the postseason is what a healthy deGrom would look like. Whether or not that happens, it's yet to be seen. Up next, obviously, Logan Gilbert, second best here, 3.5 projected wins. Framber Valdez at 3.3. Yusei Kikuchi, new ace of the Los Angeles Angels, 2.7. And then Jeffrey Springs actually comes in as the top highest steamer projected F4 pitcher for the Athletics. It's not Luis Severino. He is up next in the starting pitcher 2 category, which is led by George Kirby. Him and Gilbert were tied at 3.5 projected F4, so I could have put either one of them here. It doesn't really matter. I think Gilbert is probably the one compared to Kirby, just given their season last year. Up next, Hunter Brown on this list for the Astros. Then nasty Nate Eovaldi back to Texas. Jose Soriano at 2.1 projected F4 as well for the Angels. And like I said, Luis Severino just over 1.5 projected F4. He had a decent season with the Mets, but pitching in a AAA ballpark, it'll be tough for Severino to, I think, be better than this in 2025. But obviously George is like the guy on this list. Now, having Luis Castillo here as the starting pitcher 3 kind of feels like a disservice to him. Like, it feels like he should be like in a 2A category, because you look back at it, would be second here, right? He'd be with Hunter Brown ahead of Nate Eovaldi. But since the Mariners pitching staff is so good, he is relegated to the 3rd spot with John Gray. I mean, Reed Detmers is projected as the third highest valuable pitcher for the Angels. Then Ronel Blanco, and then Mitch Spence for the Athletics. The Astros pitching staff, it's very banged up right now. Christian Javier will come back at some point during the season. I mean, McCullers has been making progress. Luis Garcia, JP France, like there's a lot of options for the Astros. So where that kind of stands at the end of the season will yet to be seen. But regardless, any of those guys I don't think is better than Luis Castillo in 2025. And almost a 3 projected win here for Castillo, I think, is pretty accurate. Now, here's where it gets a little funky for me. Bryce Miller, according to Baseball Reference, not Fangraphs, but Baseball Reference, was the most valuable pitcher for the Mariners last year. And he had a very hot September. Like, he was lights out down the stretch. 2.1 feels low. And I guess that's my own bias kind of coming in here. But Bryce Miller still leads the pack as the 4th best starting pitcher of these categories, ahead of Tyler Mahle, ahead of Spencer Arringhetti, ahead of Tyler Anderson, and ahead of J.P. Sears. Leading the way, the only pitcher of the 4th spot to be projected more than 2 wins. Bryce Miller, it's Miller time. Bro's goated. Like, he's looked good all offseason. I'm excited for him in 2025, what he can do. And not changing anything here, the Mariners will dominate pitching in the American League West. Brian Wu, the only 5th starter of these teams to be projected more than 1 win, and he almost makes it to 2 at a projected 1.9. Also feels a bit egregious, but that's neither here nor there. Cody Bradford there for the Rangers at 0.8. Hayden Wesneski, and this is where like the Astros get a little weird. Like, it's not going to be Wesneski for the entire season, right? So how that kind of plays out, that's yet to be seen. But as it stands right now, Wesneski is the 5th starter for the Astros on roster resource. Kyle Hendricks there for the Angels at 0.6, and then Osvaldo Bido at 0.4 for the Athletics, rounding out the starting pitchers. Not a good look for the Angels and the Athletics, but we knew that their pitching wasn't their strong suit, whereas like the Mariners, they dominated this. But they do not take the cake with the bullpen. Pretty big overhaul for the Rangers for their bullpen. Chris Martin, Robert Garcia in, Kirby Yates, Jose Leclerc out. but they're still projected a higher F4 than both the Mariners and the Astros. If the Astros had Ryan Presley, I think that they would be up here ahead of the Rangers, but they do fall down with only Brian Abreu and Josh Hader to kind of lead the way for 3.1. Obviously, the Mariners, like, the projection model has Colin Snyder being worth nothing, like 0.0. Like, I just don't see it. Also, this is not factoring in Matt Brash. It's not factoring in Troy Taylor. Like, I think the Mariners will have the better bullpen than the Rangers by season's end. That's no discredit to Chris Martin or Robert Garcia. Garcia acquired from the Nationals in the Nathaniel Lowe trade, but that's not the point. The point is the Rangers are the best team in the American League West by a lot of these projections. Rounding out the bullpens here, Mason Miller and Ben Joyce leading the way for, I'd say, the majority of the war by the Athletics and the Angels bullpen respectively. But like I said, we do need to announce a winner of the American League West by projected F4, and going just all across the board here. The Mariners had 6 of the top players at their given positions. The Astros had 3 of the top players at the given positions. The Rangers also had 6. The Angels had 0, and like I mentioned, the Athletics had 1 with Lawrence Butler. As far as WAR is concerned, the Athletics had 32.5 projected wins. The Angels had 34.4. The Astros had 42 flat. The Mariners come in here second with 43.7, and just 0.6 ahead of them is the Texas Rangers. So Pacoda, Fangraphs, those projected win models, they're right on the money with the Rangers being the best team in the American League West based on a lot of projection models going into 2025. But what do you guys think? Where do you think the Mariners stand as far as the American League West is concerned? Make sure you guys let me know down below. Thank you guys for watching, and go Mariners.